just stay where it is supposed to be. All right. So this last session is in some ways a catch-all for any questions that you might have had while we have been going through this. And anything is fair game. So any questions you have about anything you see in church or about how we worship or about the Episcopal Church or any of that. Also, I want to talk a little bit about some faith and practice stuff. Okay, you want to be a Christian in the Episcopal Church. What does that actually look like in terms of how you, what might you do to practice that? So that's where we're going to begin today. And if you don't have many questions, then you're going to get to learn about the polity and organization of the Episcopal Church as an entity. So if you don't want that, you should have lots of questions. But I'm happy to, and in fact, it's important for us to do just a little bit on polity so you kind of understand how we relate to other Episcopal churches and how that's different from other denominations, etc. So that's kind of the things we're going to get today. One, some faith practice stuff. Two, probably a little organization of the Episcopal Church stuff and kind of how we govern ourselves and this sort of thing. And then three, whatever questions we come up with along the way. So that's where we're heading. I'm not actually sure I have enough. We're gonna try. So I have another handout for you all, and if you have had a meeting with me as I definitely do not have enough. We may need to look off of each other.
I've received like 4 of these.
If you've received like 4 of them and you know what's on it, then look, I found my sermon notes that I lost from 2 weeks ago. Anybody else hasn't seen this document before? Let's see, I apologize. I don't know why or where I carried those off to. So, this is a list of practices that we hope for at Trinity Church from our members. They are not things you do in order to get God's favor, because if you haven't figured out by now, we don't really do that stuff here. But they're more like, these are good things for Christian people to do, and Christians in the Episcopal Church particularly. And we want you to have deep connections with God in Jesus in the kind of, gentle and winsome and hopeful way that we follow Jesus here at Trinity. So the vestry actually published this list a number of years ago, and I often go through it with new members. So it's entirely possible you've had a meeting with me at some point, and we've actually looked through this list before. But one of the reasons why I like it is it's very sort of basic in terms of here are some things that Christian people do, and it's not to say Christians always do them, but it is to say that, if you go back 2 millennia, these are things that come up over and over again. And they're also kind of how we want you to operate at Trinity Church as best we can. So I want to just talk through them. First, we want you to be at church on Sunday. And we don't do coercion on that. You'll never hear me use the phrase obligation day or anything like that. Someone just cringed and I saw it. That's kind of how I feel about it too. I don't think it is an obligation to worship in the sense that when we worship, we call the Eucharist, we use the service Holy Eucharist here. The Eucharist is a word in Greek that means to be thankful. And so it is an obligation for us to worship God in the sense that we have things to be thankful for. God doesn't need us to do that. God isn't up there going, oh, I want them to worship me today, because that's not how God is. But God, if we are in a relationship with another person and they do something nice for us, a reasonable thing is to thank you. That was really thoughtful of you. And God is not like a person in some ways, but God is also like a person in some ways. And why do we come to church every week for Holy Eucharist? Well, I bet we can find things to be thankful for, to give thanks to God for. And we offer that out of a sense of gratitude and thanksgiving and cheerfulness, not out of a sense of, the priest said it's an obligation day. I hate it, but I'm going anyway.
Followed by guilt.
Followed by guilt when you don't go, Exactly. I just don't think guilt or shame I do not think it's healthy for Christians, and the longer I do this work, and I work with you all and serve you all, the more I just think it is a violation of the message that we proclaim. And so I can't, it's deeply learned in our culture, so I can't say that like we're never going to do it here at Trinity, but we're really going to try hard not to. But beyond that, I hope you know, and some of you have said things like this to me, but like there are new people here who aren't in this room who say things to me like, church is like the only place I feel happy. It's like the one place in my life where I can count on being happy, which makes me feel great when I hear it. But it also, like, to do worship the way we do it, it takes about 20 volunteers a week, between people who get the altar ready, between people who do the visible roles on Sunday morning, like serving and being an usher and reading and whatnot. And you may think, well, I don't really want to serve on Sunday because, it's work and I got to like schedule myself and all of this. And granted, like we're all busy, nobody, again, no guilt, no shame, right? And it is true that the people who volunteer on Sunday make room for people like my friend who says, this is the only place that I'm happy. Like all of those people lay the groundwork to make the space for her to have that kind of an experience. And I hope that maybe someday when she's in a different space in her life, maybe she'll serve so that somebody else can have an experience like she did. So I'd encourage you, like as you can, and sometimes we really can't, and that's okay, but as you can, to consider serving on Sunday morning so that somehow, and that might be like Altar Guild, where you're actually here on Friday getting the altar ready to go, and doing things that nobody really sees. They just notice the impact of. Like you can tell if the church change, like church is green today, it's going to be blue next Sunday, and there's a couple of mostly ladies who are going to come in and do that work, over the Thanksgiving holiday, and it's very quiet and back room, and nobody knows that they're there, but they are, and we would know it very quickly if they weren't doing their work. So,
if we volunteer and we haven't done it before, is there like a dry run or like
yes.
orientation?
Yes,
or...
I'm happy to train. So there's two things. If somebody has something particular they want to do, we'll make sure they get trained for that kind of in a timely fashion. I'm thinking that I'm going to do an actual training for everybody that serves in a liturgical role in January sometime, and I haven't set a date for that yet. And I probably will include everybody who currently serves, like just to kind of train. Not that we're not doing anything bad, but just to kind of get everybody on the same page. So I will do both of those things for people who are interested. And there are some things where you don't want me to train you, like Altar Guild. Actually, you need the Altar Guild ladies to train you, but I can facilitate all of that. So we definitely, and there are ways to shadow people for other things. So yes, we don't like throwing people in the deep end.
I'd be like, I'm going to screw this up.
Yeah. Yes. So that's the first thing, is to be at church and to serve at church as we can, and not out of guilt, but out of sense of thanksgiving. Now, the second thing, I gave away my sheet here. So, second and third are to have a daily pattern of reading the Bible and to have a daily pattern of prayer. Now, a lot of us don't read the Bible every day, and that's okay. Again, this is aspirational, this list. It's what we hope for you, to find a way to read the Bible every day. Now, there's a million ways to do that. But the reason we want to read the Bible every day is it is a place where Christians over the millennia have met God. It's a means of grace. It's a way that God turns us into being more like Jesus. And similarly in prayer. And sometimes, like, having a pattern of prayer might be as simple as getting in your car for your morning commute and muttering, prayers for whoever is on your heart in your car. I mean, it can be that simple. It can be just as simple as, saying, oh, God, help that person as those people come to mind. Or it can be something more elaborate. There are people who pray daily prayer from the Book of Common Prayer. So they might pray morning prayer and evening prayer every day. Some people pray morning prayer only every day, and that, that's a 15 or 20 minute commitment. Lent is an excellent time to play around with new forms of prayer or reading the Bible. That's the season before Easter. And a lot of times you'll hear, sorry, I'm really going to bag on the Catholic people here today, but the Catholic people will say, oh, we got to give up something for Lent. And we do that here, but a lot of times we actually add something for Lent. So it's not so much giving up, although you can. But a lot of times we're going to do some additional spiritual reading, or we're going to play around with the way of praying, or what have you. There have been times where I've limited my TV time, or said I'm going to read a theology book before I read my novel on a particular day, and I try to stick with that during Lent. Usually I fail miserably, but that's also kind of the point of Lent. So anyway, though. Finding ways to do that, and I have resources for all of that. If the way you're currently reading scripture or praying is not working for you, or if you don't have a way, I'd be happy to talk with you about just some ideas about how you might do that, and we hope that you do. All right, 4. Okay, sure. Thank you, Ann. 4. We aspire to having a ministry inside Trinity and a ministry outside Trinity. So the inside Trinity part, I already stole my thunder. That was what I said in the first bit. When we serve here, we're making space for other people to experience God. And so even if what we are doing is something sort of mundane and practical, like, being an usher and passing out bulletins, well, that actually really matters, that people get greeted, and somebody acts like you matter when you walk into church, right? So even things that appear like, well, this isn't really ministry, I'm literally just passing out, do you want large print or regular, matters. It matters. And a ministry outside Trinity. Some of you have jobs that are ministry. They might not get called that, but if you help people somehow in your work, it probably is a ministry. Or you might be in other kinds of places that help people. So like, Kiwanis or other clubs like that often are, places where you have some community service type stuff. Those are all good things to do. And that's what we mean by having something that you do outside here. Because we're not just here for the people that turn up at the door. We're here for the whole city, the whole community. We want to try to serve everybody as much as we can. So we aspire to give. And this says we aspire to tithe, to give 10% of one's income. I suspect that few of our people tithe, actually, because it's really hard to, living on 90% of what you make is tough to do. But to give cheerfully whatever you can. God owns and gives you what you have as far as resources go. They don't belong to you, they belong to God. They don't belong to me, they belong to God. And so when we give, we're partly saying that the amount of money we have doesn't matter as much as our connection to God and to this particular church community. And again, we don't do guilt here, so we're not saying you have to tithe or you're bad. We're not saying, what's that? Yeah, sorry. So it's whatever amount you feel good about giving, and always with an invitation to evaluate it in the coming year, because inflation usually goes one way. So the expenses here always go up a little bit, even if we try real hard to hold them down. And so if you can increase your pledge from one year to the next, that is helpful. And we're people of mercy here. So every year somebody gets cancer and says, comes to say, I don't know if I can pay my pledge. And that is okay because things happen. But what that means is then for those of us where things aren't happening, we try to do what we can so that when things happen to us, and they probably will because that's how life goes, we can be shown grace that we're showing to other people now. So. 6, we aspire to find safe friends to share real life with at Trinity. That's important. You're not going to like everybody here. You're just not. And that's not because, maybe there's some people that aren't that likable, but there are people who aren't. But most of us can do 5 friendships anyway, actively at one time. That's, unless you're very extroverted and can have lots and lots of people. So what we hope for is people finding close relationship with a few people that they can actually like come to depend on and come to like do life with. And we hope that that happens here at church. And so often those people show us Jesus. Like when you get to know somebody really well and they turn up for you when stuff goes bad. And you enjoy their love and friendship, and you also see a little bit of what God is like in them. So that's why these are not just practices that are sort of what we hope for Trinity Church people. This is just Christian practice stuff. This is not Christianity. Following Jesus is not something we do on our own. It is something we do in community with other people. And that's both the community of like, oh, I kind of know that guy that sits on the end of my pew, that's sort of loose relationships with a lot of people. But like, I think about maybe over my lifetime a dozen people that have been really important to how I've come to think and worship and pray. And those people have really mattered to me. And maybe there are people like that here who you will come to know. 7, we solve conflicts directly at Trinity Church. So if, here, I'm going to give you that one back, Julian. Thanks. If you have a conflict, and you may, because we're people here, so something might be how you don't think it ought to be, we go directly to the people who have the power to make the decision or to change the decision or who are in charge of the thing that you are concerned about. We do not go to the Baraboo United Facebook page. Sorry, was that too pointed? That sort of stuff is toxic to community. And same thing with rumors or if gossip that flies around about the congregation from time to time. Just always go to the person who is in charge. And a lot of times that's me because our structure is such that I'm in charge of a bunch of things. But it could be members of the vestry. It could be wardens. Jeanette Zissel is our senior warden right now. Robert Maravich, wave Robert. Robert is our junior warden. So if it's something about me or something where you don't want to deal with me, you can go to the wardens, and they're sort of the officers of the congregation. Brian Bry is the treasurer of the congregation, so he's the guy who knows where money goes in and out, and I know some of that stuff, but sometimes I defer to Brian when I get confused. So those are the people, and everybody here is doing the best they can, I think. And so we want to honor that and assume that people have good intentions, even if some silly or troubling decision has been made, and go to the people that are involved with it. And there's ways we can do that together in a way that, and actually I tell the vestry a lot, once in a while, it's not frequently, but once in a while we have conflict at vestry meetings where we don't agree about something that's on the table. It's really healthy for us to have some conflict sometimes at vestry meetings because it says that there are people who are engaged and who care about the outcome and about this church and about what happens to it, and they just happen to not see things the same way. And if we can be respectful and treat each other well in the course of that, even if we don't solve it, even if we don't change people's minds, that actually is really a healthy thing for us as a vestry and for the wider church community too. And I dare say it's kind of healthy for us as a society to be able to do that too. So this place gives us a place to practice with people that we might like a little better than people we see in the Baraboo United Facebook page. So there are these. This is not an exclusive list of Christian practice stuff. It covers a lot of ground. One thing that I think has been influential for me in a way that I didn't understand when I started is having ways to serve the poor tangibly has changed my life and changed the way that I think about God. That kind of gets covered in the 4th bullet about having a ministry outside the church, because you could serve the poor in that would very much be a ministry. But that is a place where, I read Matthew's Gospel in chapter 25, Jesus himself saying, like, we are going to find Jesus when we serve the poor in his name. So that's another place that often becomes a means of grace for Christian people. And it's worth saying, I think, that specifically is one. But there's lots of ways to be a Christian. And there's some kind of nuts and bolts like basics, and those are the ones we've given you. And then you can kind of go in all sorts of directions. And in the name of Jesus, as it were, and be doing ministry and be pursuing God's grace in your life. questions about any of that? None. Okay. So,
I mean, I have random questions.
random questions. Let's do random questions.
Very random.
Random.
When you're facing the altar, the flag on the right, opposite of the American flag,
Is the Episcopal Church
okay,
flag.
Curious.
Yes,
Okay.
indeed. Yes. And I once knew what all the symbols on the Episcopal Church flag were, but I forget now. But if you were to Google it, you would find it. But that is the Episcopal Church flag. Yes, sometimes flags in the church are a bit controversial because there is because of exactly the sorts of things I was talking about in my sermon this morning, because of the sense of that any particular nation you are in is not the kingdom of God. I would like it better, I think, if the flags were such that they were downstream of the preacher in our space, so either in the back corners or something, so that we could preach to the flag, because sometimes you have to do that. But here we have the flags in the nave like that, and that's fine. It's not worth getting into a fight over. Yeah, exactly. Right.
I had another question that's less minor, but so coming from Roman Catholic, and you touched on Lent, Ash Wednesday in the church.
Yes.
How, from my perspective or my background, I think that's like a really important day that's observed by a lot of people. And how is that in the Episcopal Church and this particular parish? Yep.
So very similar to what you would find in the Roman Church, actually. So we tend to have at least one service on Ash Wednesday. I think we had 2 scheduled last year, and the evening one got canceled for weather because it started snowing in the middle of the afternoon on Ash Wednesday. Sometimes we have done one at 7 p.m. I think last year was the first year in a while we had tried to do like a noon or something, and then or we often do like 12:15 for people that are like taking lunch at noon so they can get here, and then like a 7 p.m. And that service usually is Holy Eucharist with imposition of ashes. So actually pretty much like we did the anointing today, ashes are imposed in the middle of the service and then followed by Holy Eucharist. And I think that bit that it's, I guess I don't know if it's always Mass in the Roman Church on Ash Wednesday. For sure some of the services would be. You might know. It is? Okay, yeah. So probably very similar, actually, then. And when I was in Minnesota, before I came here, there were a couple times where I did not have a convenient Episcopal church from my work. And so there were a couple times where I went to the Catholic parish in the town where my office was, the suburb where my office was, and I didn't find it terribly different at all.
And then, sorry.
No, please. No one else had a question, so you get them all.
And then I've heard different, like maybe it's just each person's preference, but with the ashes, I've heard different things about, let's say you go to the 12:15 Mass, and about keeping the ashes on versus taking them off. And I've heard like not good or nice philosophies either way. Yeah. Is there
there's no right or wrong. And you'll find in the Episcopal Church there are very few times when we have a view on something.
Yeah, I love it.
You get 3 of us in a room and you get 4 opinions. Some people I know will wash them off immediately following the service. I mean, the gospel reading for Ash Wednesday is Jesus telling people not to disfigure themselves when they pray. And I've actually known, they're now departed, but there were a couple of parishioners here who have died, who boycotted Ash Wednesday because they felt like we were doing the thing that Jesus told us not to do. But myself, I tend to leave them on, and then I wash them off before the next service. Because I don't feel like the reason that I'm doing it is to draw attention to myself when I'm praying necessarily, that it's more for me than for anybody that's looking at me, even though I can't see them, but I do.
You already have like the collar.
Yeah, right. So there's a little bit. But, So I think it can go either way. And there have been times where I've washed them off for a reason on that particular day, actually I think there have been times where I've made hospital visitations and I knew I was going to impose ashes on someone that was in the hospital and I wanted to do that with them, so I washed them, So, if you have court or something and you want to take them off, like take them off. That's fine, or whatever reason you might have.
It seems like the old school Catholic, like you didn't dare take the ashes off.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, there's this meme that's gone around the last several years about, I think it's about Matthew McConaughey, the actor, and his 40-day diet because he went on CNN once on Ash Wednesday with ashes. He's Catholic, and so with ashes on, and he was talking about his Lenten preparation, and the little cryon at the bottom of CNN was like Matthew McConaughey's 40-day diet or whatever, and, and he was just talking about Lent, and whoever was, whatever poor intern was running the graphics for CNN did not understand what was happening. So yeah. So it very much is up to you, I would say. Yeah.
I like that flexibility.
Other completely random questions. Okay, keep thinking. The Episcopal Church is a deeply complicated body when it comes to how it is organized. And that is both a feature and a bug. The Episcopal Church was formed in 1789 in Philadelphia. And so our legislative body, the place where we make policy for the church, looks a lot like Congress. It meets once every 3 years in the summer, and this is a general convention is what it's called. This is a general convention. Next year? It's next year. Yeah, 26 is the general convention year. They chose Phoenix in July, which seems to be a bad idea to me. And it has two houses. General Convention has two houses, the House of Deputies and the House of Bishops. And if you think to yourself, I know a representative body that passes legislation that has two houses, an upper and a lower, and was also formed in 1789 and you're right. So each diocese of the Episcopal Church sends their bishop or bishops, who then sit in the House of Bishops, and then elects deputies for convention, and I believe it's four lay people or clergy. No, four clergy, and 4 lay people, and 4 alternates each. Because sometimes you got to go to the bathroom and the business is happening on the floor of convention, and so an alternate can buzz in and take your place while you go off. And there are about 110 dioceses in the Episcopal Church. So if you can do the math, 110 dioceses times 8 delegates in the House of Deputies, that's a lot. So they need a place like a Phoenix or a large city just to have enough hotel rooms for all of them. 2027 is the next meeting, yeah. Okay. So we have a diocese, and I've told you before, I think the basic building block of Anglicanism is the bishop and their diocese, because there is no pope of Anglicanism, and there is no hierarchy in Anglicanism to speak of. We have the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's the leading cleric in the Church of England, and in some ways they're a little bit like first among equals among all of the bishops in the communion, but they have no authority here. They can't do anything in the Diocese of Wisconsin, because it is the Diocesan Bishop of Wisconsin that has the ability to do anything in Wisconsin. So it is very much kind of a fraternal relationship of churches, but there is not like a, short of the presiding bishop, who is the kind of first among equals in the American church. There is no like worldwide body that will make us do any particular thing or not in the church in the United States. And the Episcopal Church actually is in the United States and in several places in Central America, and it's in Cuba and a few other places, mostly in the Western Hemisphere. Sometimes you'll hear people call it the Episcopal Church in the United States because it used to be called that, but we're actually technically in about, I think it's like 14 countries maybe, but mostly Central and American and Caribbean places. So the things that you need to know, unless you really want to go to General Convention, for 27, the deputies were just elected at our diocesan convention, which is just like General Convention, but on a more local level. So we get, this year we had 2 delegates to diocesan convention, And next year, because our attendance has gone over 50 on a Sunday on average, we will get 3 delegates to Diocesan Convention. Diocesan Convention meets every year, often is 2 days. And the last couple years and next year it has been in Stevens Point because that is kind of central in the state, which is our diocese is the state of Wisconsin at this point. Diocesan Convention does things like pass the diocesan budget, which determines how much the bishop and all of his people get paid. It also determines how much congregations pay in the diocesan assessment. So we pay, out of our take every year, up to the diocese a certain amount of money to make sure that the bishop has money to get paid from, and all of the people that work for the bishop have money to support their ministries as well. So the diocesan budget is largely drawn from the diocesan assessment. And if you think to yourself, that sounds a little bit like we're getting taxed, you're not wrong, exactly. And it's a significant amount. Like our budget total this next year, we just ran through the first draft at vestry this week. Our expenses are going to be about $223,000 for next year, and our assessment number is $27,815, I think. So that supports a diocesan budget in the, I believe it's about a $4 million budget. But a lot of that supports ministries that we participate in, like a big one and an expensive one is church camp for young people. It also supports all of the salaries of the diocesan staff who work with us on a sometimes daily basis. All of our accounting for stuff that our accounts payable, things that we buy, all of our accounting essentially is done by the diocesan office at this point. And they have a person who does that for like 40 parishes. So there is some value other than just setting $27,000 on fire. You do get something out of it. If we were to have a change in clergy here, like if I was to go somewhere else, there is a staff person called the Canon to the Ordinary, who is Scott Liana, who has been here to preach a number of times. And he would help the vestry here run a search for a new person. So that's another thing that the diocesan office does. But we get some say at Diocesan Convention about what the diocesan budget looks like. So we have an annual meeting here, which is the same kind of annual meeting as every nonprofit you've ever been part of. Our annual meeting tends to be the last Sunday in January at coffee hour time, and that is where we elect delegates, or deputies, if you will, to Diocesan Convention to represent us and to vote on things that come up at convention. So that we elect in January, and convention is always in October. And I wanted to say that all sounds complicated and cumbersome, but as long as we're having, as long as we're talking about the Catholic Church a lot today, you can have problems in church life if you are only governed by clergy. Like if lay people don't have substantial input in the direction and mission of the church, you can have problems. There's, of course, the obvious problem in the Roman Church of more a generation ago than current, but of all of the abuse things and things that got covered up because clergy were covering up for clergy and what have you. And certainly those are sets of problems you can have. But also, like, lay people bring such different perspective to the process of how we do church life together. And in the Episcopal Church, we have a lot of input from lay people, both at Diocesan Convention and at General Convention, and in lots of other ways. Like if Bishop Gunter were to retire, which will happen in the next few years, because he's 67, maybe turned 68 now, and he's required to retire on his 72nd birthday if he hasn't retired before that. So we know that that's coming. And there will be a search committee, and it will be half clergy and half lay people when the time comes for that. And that's not how they do it in the Roman Church. So it makes it like more cumbersome to like get people together, because if you're dealing with lay people, then they all have jobs outside the church, and so like just calendaring can be a mess, and it can take longer, and sometimes you get to deal with personalities then. But you know what? Clergy have personalities too. So there is I think it's on balance, it's much better that we have a lot of lay involvement in the governance of the church than it is that we don't. Paul.
You talked about recruiting a priest for,
Yeah.
and that was something very different from what
Yes.
priests do as
Right.
Catholic. If you could kind of just go through that.
Yeah.
I think that's a significant difference.
So there's some ways in which we are pretty similar to the Roman Church in terms of how we do clergy stuff. So like when a bishop or a priest or a deacon is ordained, we take a vow of obedience to the bishop and to whoever our bishop might be at the time. And that's all pretty similar. And then we are what's called canonically resident in a diocese. And when you're the rector of a place like I have been, you're always canonically resident in the place you serve. So I am a clergy of the Diocese of Wisconsin. I am not a member of any church. I'm not a member of this church. I'm not a member of any church. My wife and my kids are members here, but I am not because I work for the bishop. What that functionally means is that when I came to this church, the application process went through the diocesan office, and the canon to the ordinary kind of screened applications for rector of Trinity Church. So I had my initial interview with her. And what she did then was she sent a list of names down to the vestry, the search committee, which here was mostly vestry people, and basically said, here are some promising candidates. And here's a list, 1, 2, 3, however many there were. And then the vestry or search committee at the parish interviews those folks and decides who they would like to call, and the bishop approves that call. Now the bishop could, in theory, say no, but there would be that's a pretty extreme and unusual. Usually the bishop will sort of just rubber stamp whatever comes across their desk. So I work for the bishop technically, but I'm paid by you all. When you're the rector of a place, you can't fire me. You can ask the bishop to get rid of me, but the bishop's office has to be involved. Essentially, you kind of have tenure when you're the rector of a place. So if there's nothing illegal or immoral that has gone on, you're hard to get rid of. In theory, that means that I'm allowed to say things that might be harder for you to hear, and you can't just fire me because I said something in a sermon you don't like. The problem is that you still pay me. So people can vote with their pocketbook if they decide that they don't like what they're hearing. So it's all very tricky that way. But
Well, the Catholic Church is almost musical chairs.
Mhm.
It's decided, this pastor goes over here,
Right.
someone's over it automatically.
And actually the Methodist Church, the United Methodists, do a very similar thing to that.
Right.
So it's not just Catholics.
So, does that go on in the Episcopal Church? I mean, it doesn't
yeah.
from the standpoint of recruiting, I understand
Mhm.
that. But as far as deciding, let's say, as I understand it, Father Seefeld was asked to
Right.
take over a parish. Is
Yeah.
that he decided he wanted to move on?
Correct. So in theory, the bishop could order you to go somewhere. And you would have to obey because or you turn in your collar. They never do it that way because obviously that's fraught and complicated. And, I have a wife who teaches in this school district. So there's, family stuff that I think in a previous era, they would have just done it that way. Now it's very much a conversation. So Father Seefeld, who Paul mentioned, was my predecessor here, and he left in 2016. And Bishop Miller, at the time, had asked him if he would consider taking over Zion Church in Oconomowoc as a rector there. And they were having some trouble, and he thought Scott would be a good fit for them. And he's still there, so I think
That's my mom's church.
probably was. Oh, very good, yeah.
Behind
It's a lovely place. And Father Seefeld is... Yeah, okay. Father Seefeld is lovely, and but it was very much a conversation then that he and his family had to have about, do we want to do this? And no bishop in their right mind is gonna order a clergy around without talking to them. They might appoint a clergy, Zion didn't have a say in whether they got Father Seefeld or not. But there was enough trouble happening at that point that they just wanted, that. I think that went okay there because they just wanted somebody in the seat, and it turned out, I think that it probably worked out pretty well for everybody. But no, here, if I were to go somewhere, there would be a search, there would be a substantial amount of congregational input. and unless you tried to hire somebody that the bishop had like blacklisted or something, and I'm not even sure that that might be a blacklist of 0. Unless there was some reason why the person that the congregation wanted to hire was something had happened or something, then they would be allowed to hire whoever they thought would be best. So in some ways, the diocese functions as our HR a little bit. Like they had to verify that I was actually ordained, that I didn't just say I was ordained. They called the church pension fund and said, do you have records of, so that kind of thing and there's a major criminal background check that happens when you go from one diocese to another, and they run all of that. So that kind of thing. But yeah, there's not much sort of appointment circus stuff in the Episcopal Church. It's very much the congregation usually has a substantial amount of input. The clergy that are going there usually have a substantial amount of input. And almost never does it happen against people's will. So, congregation or clergy. Good questions. Diocesan convention in this diocese sets a clergy minimum salary. That is one thing that the convention always does. So there's a certain amount that the diocese has said, if you're calling a full-time priest in the Diocese of Wisconsin, you have to pay them at least X. They always pass that in a way that it's very much like the teacher experience means if you have an experienced person, you have to pay them more than if you have someone who is new. So I think this year, clergy with 0 to 3 years of experience, for them to be full-time, you have to pay them at least $62,000, I think. And there's an expectation that you have health insurance for anybody in their family that needs it, and that you pay their pension. And then I'm in the 9 to 12 years of experience box, and next year we'll go to 13, which is the top end. So I'm more expensive than that. But that helps. That it means that we don't have to negotiate between vestry and I about my salary ever, because it's just, if you're on the minimum, which I am, then it's just whatever number convention passes is the number that it is. And I like it that way. It stinks having to negotiate for your own salary, so I don't like doing that. But it's very fair. We're compensated very well for Protestant clergy, I would say, kind of towards the top end of any Protestant church in general. It's very fair, and I'm very happy. People say, "Oh, you're on the minimum." Well, minimum's fine. It's no big deal. And given the size of the parish and what people pledge here and whatnot, it's appropriate that I'm on the minimum because we just can't afford more than that. So, yeah. Other questions? Hearing none, I will take the confirmation information form from anybody who's got those filled out. I do. I have several. Yeah. On the 14th, if you can plan to be present by 8:30 in the morning, because I think the bishop would like to talk to folks, and we'll probably have. I don't know if we'll have you sit together because there's going to be a lot of us. So far, of the people that I know who are being confirmed, received, or reaffirmed, I think we have at least 23, and I'm not sure that I have all the forms in. So it will be both a big service in terms of the number of people being confirmed and received, and also I imagine that some of those folks will bring guests. So I think it will be quite full just in general. And otherwise, though, I don't know that there's a lot or anything that you need to do ahead of time. Very good. Well, thank you so much for going through the class and learning and asking great questions. And we're very happy to have you all confirmed or received. And more than that, I'm just so thrilled that you all have found a home here at Trinity. It is truly a joy to serve you. And if I can be of service in any particular way as we go forward together, I'm always a phone call or an email away. I'm very happy to take care of anybody as best I can. So thank you, and see you Sunday. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Safe travel.
I'm not sure which one to check off.